In this episode of The Garden Basics, we talk with Don Shor from Redwood Barn Nursery in Davis, California, about the problems, successes, and failures in this year's summer garden. We share info about the tomato winners like Dr. Wyche's Yellow, Cupid, and Chef's Choice Orange, while addressing the challenges for many gardeners this year, such as blossom end rot on tomatoes, as well as discussing effective watering techniques. Don offers insights about various new tomato cultivars, including promising crosses of hybrids and heirlooms. So take lots of notes, refer to the transcript, or check out this week's Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter to get all the great garden tips that we have to offer. We're podcasting from the Barking Dog Studios here in the beautiful Abutilon jungle in suburban Purgatory. Let's go. It's midsummer. How's your garden doing? Well, it really depends where you are. It depends on your weather. It depends on a lot of things. So we're going to do a little report on what's happening out here in our own gardens, but we're going to be talking about a lot of things that just might be a problem where you are in your summer garden. We are talking with Don Shor. He owns a nursery, Redwood Barn Nursery in Davis, California. So he's going to be telling us sad tales of the gardeners in his area and the problems they've been facing this summer. And Don, let's face it, this is probably the nicest summer we can remember in a long time.
Yeah, I hate to brag because people in the rest of the country have been struggling through extraordinary heat. My kid lives in New York City, and there was one day when it was 98 degrees and 98% humidity, or at least that's what she said. And I think she might have been close to that. We've had one of the mildest July that I can remember. May and June weren't bad either, and the number of days over 100 degrees in the Sacramento Valley, it depends on where you are, of course, but we've had, according to the Simis weather stations in Davis, two. It's August 13th as we record this, and we've had 2 days over 100. Dixon 3, Woodland 4, Winters 7, and Fair Oaks 10. So I don't think any of those are particularly high for the time of year. I think most of them are quite low. And I think where you are in Folsom, you probably haven't even had 10, have you?
I don't think we have had 10. And it's definitely, if it got over 100, it was barely over 100. Whereas last year, it was temperatures over 110 for like a solid week. And that just played havoc with people's gardens. But this year, things have been very pleasant. Well, let's put it this way. I took a big load, 50 pounds of tomatoes to the local food bank yesterday.
Okay, that was good of you. And you've saturated all your neighbors, and friends, and you're now giving them to strangers. That's amazing.
Well, they need it. They're hungry, and the tomatoes here that were doing fabulous were my old friends, Dr. Wyche's Yellow, and one of your old friends that's just gone gangbusters here, Chef's Choice Orange.
Yeah, the Chef's Choice series is phenomenal. And then there are some interesting results with different varieties this year, as we expect. That's why I keep track of these things. There's the tried and true ones that are doing well. There's some that have surprised me this year. Customers, let's talk about the negative first a little bit. Sure. A lot of comments about blossom end rot, which doesn't surprise me. We've been not just cooler in terms of daytime highs, but back in late May, early June, we had a number of night temperatures that were surprisingly cool. We actually got below 50 at one point, 48, 49 degrees. Well, that may not sound like it would make a significant difference. We do know this much about blossom end rot, which is that mushy thing that happens on the bottom of the fruit where it's rotting on the bottom. It's not a pathogen. It's not an insect problem. It's just browning on the bottom. It's an internal physiological disorder of the fruit. And we know it correlates with low temperature and uneven soil moisture. And then, of course, we can't control the low temperature. And that was happening end of May, even middle of May, end of May, and into June, where the night temperatures were getting colder than we prefer. None of us were complaining, but the tomatoes were apparently affected by it. So a lot of people coming in over the last 2 to 3 weeks, bearing in mind it's about 7 weeks from blossom to fruit picking in the case of early girl, somewhere in that range for most other varieties, 7 to 8 weeks. So when someone comes in with blossom end rot, I know there was a problem 5, 6, 7 weeks ago. And that's just about right in terms of some of the nighttime temperatures. They're looking for magic products that are going to fix blossom end rot. We know from every bit of current research that it's not a deficiency. It's not a problem that you can solve with a product. Water deeply, water more evenly, and whatever you can do about the weather, we'd appreciate taking care of those nighttime low temperatures. The next fruit that sets is usually fine. Certain varieties are famous for having problems with blossom end rot, Roma in particular. So there are some varieties that we would perhaps stay away from. Usually the plants outgrow it. We get into normal temperatures. It's not a problem going forward. But I would say more comments, more concerns about it than usual this year.
This is why I admire people like you who own nurseries and have to deal with the public on a day-to-day basis. My impulse would be, how many years do I have to tell you about watering tomato plants? This is all your fault.
That's right. I don't blame the public. Watering issues are definitely a problem. I would comment that we started the year dry. And because of mild temperatures, perhaps people don't remember this, that we didn't have extremes of high temperature May, June, or July. We had our last really significant rainfall in March, and we had one storm in April, and really not much came out of that one. So the soil was dry to start the season. More of a problem with trees and such that people were planting, but definitely a problem with tomatoes as they went in as well. If they just planted them and then set their drip system, boy, are the drip systems a problem in this regard. Yeah. Set their drip system for, I could give you 10 different settings I've heard over the last couple of weeks that have caused me to maintain a poker face as we have the conversation, so I don't say what I'm actually thinking. Who came up with 4 minutes a day as an appropriate setting for drip? Who came up with 7 minutes 3 times a week? I don't know. But things like that are not what the plants needed, especially at the start of the season when they were going into soil that was relatively dry. A deep soaking at the time of planting really made a big difference in terms of getting the plants off to a good start. And then consistent deep watering for those of us who are fortunate enough to have garden beds out in the open, right out in the garden. Deep watering as infrequently as is reasonable. And for those of you with raised planters like Fred, watering as frequently as necessary. And it's two totally different conversations, unfortunately, with respect to how to water.
Now, I have to say that over the years, I won't say I figured this out, but I have made progress on this. And the progress is in the off season, adding organic compost, worm castings, and covering it with 6 inches of leaves, dead leaves, oak leaves, leaf mold, whatever you want to call it. But all those oak trees that the leaves start falling come October, November, they're going to be in my yard. Yeah. And I want them in my yard.
You go around to your neighbors and knock on the door and ask if you can take the leaves that they've piled up?
I just rake them up.
No, they make a huge difference. And if you can grow a cover crop, that's fine. Fava beans or whatever you want to grow. Mulching with leaves, putting in compost, adding things that have some slow-acting nitrogen. The worm castings are great in that regard. Whatever you can do to make that stuff you brought in that wasn't soil more like soil can make a big difference. So raised planters have special issues that require some consideration, especially as you adopt your irrigation practices for the season. You put in your drip lines and you turn them on and you just filled it with the fanciest soil you could buy from that rock yard. And you're basically growing things in potting soil. So it is going to probably be necessary the first year, the second year that you have raised planters to water daily. That's just, it's frustrating to have to tell people that. When I say daily, I don't mean 3 minutes, 7 minutes. I mean 35 or 40 minutes each day with a drip system that distributes properly. And I believe you discovered, for example, that a 4-foot wide bed needed more than 4 lines going down it.
Yeah, woe to those who have only 1 or 2 lines, in a 4-foot wide bed. But I basically space my lateral lines 8 inches apart, so it's usually 5 lines in a 4-foot wide bed.
And roughly how long do you run it typically?
Well, it's been nice so far, but probably an hour and a half.
Yeah, so you're getting a real thorough watering when you do. And this is really the key. People tend to just not water their vegetables deeply enough, or in the case of raised planters, frequently enough. So that'll be a factor in blossom end rot because you're not giving them a deep enough water. And more to the point, you really need to get those plants off to a good start, get some good vigor on them, get them blooming in May, and that way you'll get the yield that you're expecting in August. But the conversations I'm having with people about irrigation have been frustrating. Oftentimes I find myself saying, okay, try this. Go home. You know how to bypass your timer, right? Okay, go out to the knob, turn on the drip system, and let it run all afternoon right now. What? All afternoon? That's overwatering. Well, first of all, that's a term we should just stop using. because it doesn't have any specific meaning. Second, you need to get the soil back to field capacity. All right, I've jumped into soil science jargon there, but you need to saturate the soil completely, let it drain out, and then go back to the perhaps lighter irrigation pattern you had been doing. They all forget that the first part of drip irrigation is bringing the soil to field capacity. So sometimes when they bring in a sample of a plant that's showing clear drought stress, I'll say, I just want you to soak the heck out of your whole area, not just the raised planter, the soil around it, the shrubs nearby, the beneficial insects will appreciate it. Just give everything, pretend we're having a 3-inch rainstorm in the middle of June. Then you can go back to relatively light waterings if you have to do that, but you didn't bank enough moisture at the beginning of the season. It's really what it comes down to. Those of us with open garden beds, we can deep water because the soil just goes as deep as we want. So I can go out there and set a drip line and run for 2 or 3 hours and give a really good soaking. And I don't have to do that again for 3 or 4 days, sometimes even longer, depending on where you're listening and what your soil is like. But raised planters, you do need to give it a very thorough watering, and you have to do it more frequently. So that's the first thing right there. That's the negative part.
That's why modifying the soil in a raised bed is so important by adding that compost, the worm castings, and the mulch. That mulch does a lot to preserve soil moisture.
Yeah, and the other thing I do is I cut plants off. This is just a little trick I learned years ago. Rather than pulling them at the end of the season, I'll pull 1 or 2 to check the roots. I like to look for nematodes and things like that. But the rest of them get cut off, and I take the top and pile it up. I don't have a formal compost pile, but if I did, it would go into that. Then the roots just disintegrate on site.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they break down and make macropores. They make actual channels that water and nutrients can go down further in via. So this is a simple method of building your soil the easy way, rather than turning it, which we don't think is a great plan. Mulch heavily, like you're talking about with leaves, and let the roots break down naturally in situ, and the plants will benefit in the spring as they explore the newly enriched soil that you created by fall and winter mulching.
How many tomato plants have you pulled out of the ground already?
I haven't pulled any. First of all, I cut them off.
Okay. I was quizzing you. Yeah.
There's a couple that I'm probably going to go ahead and cut off at this point because they just, honestly, I didn't like them that much. I don't want to single anybody out, but there's some of these blue and purple tomatoes that I'm just not finding all that great. I'm talking about the old-fashioned ones with the high anthocyanin content. Let's see, Cosmic Burst is one of them. Okay, it's a very blue tomato. To me, it tastes astringent. I've had 50 or so off the plant already. I'm done. I'm going to use that space for something else. But this is when a lot of people are past their first peak of production. They may have planted a determinate type that tends to produce all at once, like Roma, Principe Borghese, some of the others that people like to use for just, process and you're done. So they may be taking them out to make space for their fall and winter vegetables. Indeterminate types, they're ones that keep on growing, Champion and Rugby and the others, they'll continue to flower right on through August. They'll continue to set fruit through August and into early September, and you'll be harvesting good yields off of those in the months of October, late September into October. If you water deeply, if the plants are healthy, they'll give you a good late season crop.
I purposely took out a early planted tomato variety because it did its job. Bush Early Girl. I planted that back in the first week of April. It was done by the last week of July.
Yeah, this is a great plan for people who are limited for space, is to look for some of these compact types. There's Bush versions of Champion. There's even a Bush version of Celebrity now. These are compact versions of old favorites. And of course, there have been determinate tomatoes around forever. Principe Borghese is a great one for drying and for sauces. These are ones that you can plant. And I think you turned me on to Jet Star.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it's a small plant producing tons of fruit. Looks like it's kind of done setting fruit, and they'll be ripening over the next couple of weeks, and I'll probably take it out.
Don't do it. No. Jetstar, you'll be surprised. Jetstar will be giving you December tomatoes.
Okay. I'm happy to leave it in. I've got room. So
Okay.
Our conversations for people who are limited for space, they might be ready to take some of these out. I really think people should be a little more strategic about this. I love it when people walk into my store and buy 25 tomato plants in the spring, but they may not know exactly what they're in for. They might want to do a bunch of early types where they know they're going to process them and freeze it and can it and whatever, freeze them whole if you need to. You can do that with a lot of varieties, and then leave a few indeterminate types to just continue right on into the fall. And anybody who's grown tomatoes in the Sacramento Valley or interior parts of Southern California or the East Bay can brag about the time they've had tomatoes for Christmas, because we often have weather that's very suited to tomatoes ripening all the way into October, November frequently, and with a little strategic harvesting, they can be sitting on your counter for Christmas dinner. And that gets into another thing, which is harvesting the fruit to avoid weather problems and avoid injury from various predators, getting out there and picking them just when they're beginning to ripen rather than trying to let them go fully ripe on the vine. You get into October, November, the nights are getting colder. You're probably better off picking some of those and bringing them in and ripening them on the counter.
Let's talk about Cupid. Now, you told me the last time we talked that Cupid might be a bit precocious. It's a cherry tomato. Cupid is a thug.
It's a monster.
It's a monster. It has totally consumed a 4x4 bed that I have.
There's always one every year that does this. Cupid did it for me last year. Tim's Taste of Paradise also did it last year. So that was 2 monster cherry-style tomatoes. We're talking 12-foot vines here easily. And Cupid, everybody loved it. I would pick them. By the way, they're easy to pick, which I know that sounds like a weird trait to promote. But the fact that they just tumble into your hand and go into the bowl, you don't have to tug them like you have to do with sun gold, has some advantages.
Yeah, but you might lose a child. They'll get lost in there.
Taking over your yard. It's a meatier type. So while it's sold as a cherry tomato, it's got more firm meat to it. So you could actually throw those in a crock pot and make a good salsa out of them. I mean, unlike most cherry tomatoes, which are just for fresh eating. Cupid has really impressed me 2 years in a row. So it goes on to my highly recommended list. If you're looking for that style of fruit, it's right up there with Juliet as one that I know is going to do well and produce more than you know what to do with. But be aware, you definitely need to cage that one. I would say a 6-foot cage will barely contain it. So Cupid is a fairly new one, and I only did it for the first time last year, I think it was, or the year before. And again, I never fully recommend a tomato until I've grown it twice, and preferably even 3 or 4 times, especially if you have a weird year like this in terms of weather. Every year is weird in terms of weather, but whether it's cooler or hotter than usual, does it perform under those conditions? Yes, Cupid has been very, very good in that regard.
You turned me on to another tomato, and I am very pleased with it. It's called Saucy Lady. Or maybe, or did you tell me about it? Or maybe it was a freebie I got from Seeds and Such. Maybe
it
that
could be.
was
I've grown that one, and I'm really impressed with what all the tomato breeders are doing with the sauce and cooking type tomatoes. We talked about Rugby a couple of years ago. That's just been a phenomenal producer. Saucy Lady Inca is one that I got as a freebie from, I think, Totally Tomatoes. Totally Tomatoes and Seeds and Such, both of those companies like to throw free seed packets in when you order from them. And they've sent some really good ones out. And the Inca is a good example of one that I'm growing for the first time this year. Compact plant, heavy production, sauce style, no blossom end rot for me. So I'm hoping that will be the case for others, because we plan to grow more of that one next year. Inca has been a very good producer for us. And the one that they sent out probably 5 or 6 years ago is now being sold under the name It's a Keeper. Mm-hmm. That's been a very good performer. It has about 30 fruit on it right now. And this is one that just keeps churning them out. They keep ripening and they stay firm even when they're fully ripe. So that's, again, the name tells you this is one that's going to hold well on into the fall and winter, even sitting on your counter for as much as 10 to 14 days after you harvest. So look for some of these new ones. And I think we'll definitely be pushing Inca along with Rugby next year. And then that saucy, what do you call it?
Saucy Lady, yeah.
Saucy Lady, yeah. Good performer.
It is a determinate hybrid, excellent flavor, very suitable for making sauces and paste. I'm impressed with its size. A lot of the literature about it talks about it being 3 to 4 ounces, and mine are more like 5 to 6 ounces.
Yeah, it's a big one. And the Rugby is the other one we've talked about many times. The seed has been hard to source on that one. So I'm always looking for ones that are like it. Rugby was bred in Bulgaria. And the company that sells it sells to North America through a Canadian distributor. So the seed's been a little challenging to get this year. We hope we'll have plenty of Rugby in production next year. But that one, again, 5 to 6 ounce fruit. So people are telling me they're taking what should be a sauce tomato and slicing it and using it as a sandwich tomato. So it's a multi-purpose.
Oh, because it's an oblong tomato, you can cut the slices long ways and they fit fine on a sandwich.
There you go.
I learned my lesson about Rugby. I had old seed and new seed. So I figured, what the heck? I'll try some of each. So I planted some old seed, planted some new seed. The old seed plants got yanked by July 1st. There was only one tomato, no flowers, and it was just a foot tall. Now, this is from a plant that went in on May 12th, and it got yanked on July 1st. Whereas the new seed, rugby, is doing fine. It's doing great. It's producing a lot.
I wonder what the problem was.
Old seed.
Well, there's the only thing I can trade I can think of. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rugby has been a very good performer. This is one where I did a little experiment this year. Mid-June, I planted out some very overgrown quart pot tomatoes. They were 3 feet tall. They were ones that I hadn't gotten transplanted, hadn't sold them, or hadn't thrown them out. So I thought, I'll stick these guys in the ground. And I dropped them down as usual, about 16 inches deep into the ground. And they sat there because they had been terribly root bound. And so I gave them a little boost of fertilizer. I don't normally have to do that, but I went ahead and gave them a little bit of liquid fertilizer that we sell. And they're taking off now, and they're flowering, and they're going to be a great late crop for me. So rugby has great potential for those of you that are looking for a late season processing tomato. It's a really good tomato in general, but in this particular case, I got it in late, and it's going to be a good late performer for me. So once again, rugby comes to the rescue for the late season.
Where Don lives, over in the Davis area in Yolo and Solano counties, that is the prime processing tomato growing region in California, and seed development is a big deal in that area.
Yep.
And so you see a lot of tomatoes are coming out of Northern California that are being developed down the street from you.
Well, you see a lot of tomatoes lining the highway on-ramps at the moment.
Yeah.
They're harvesting, and it's number one crop in both Yolo and Solano counties where I am, and they're coming out of the ground right now. Yes, there's breeders over here, and there's a whole lot of good varieties coming. Well, you like the Chef's Choice series. Those are not from the Davis area, but the breeder is up in Maxwell. Where? Maxwell? Huh? Colusa County up there. And I think that's the only thing in Maxwell.
No, they have a baseball diamond and a hall and a volunteer fire department. I know because we went up there to play a softball game when I was working at a radio station in Sacramento to play their volunteer fire department. They put on one heck of a feast, I want to tell you.
Well, they have the best delicatessen on Interstate 5. So now I do want to mention a couple of varieties that have done very well for me this year, but I got to be cautious because, this is an unusual year. I went back and planted one that I hadn't grown in over a decade, Carmelo. And it's 2 L's. I cross-checked this on the line, Carmello. This is a French hybrid from the 1930s. So is that an heirloom or is it a hybrid? Hard to say. But Gary Ibsen, who is well known in tomato circles, Gary Ibsen has the Tomato Fest website and is well known for his promotion of open pollinated strains. He took this French hybrid and dehybridized it. This is a process they go through where they save the seed, grow the seedlings, pick out the seedlings or the plants from those seedlings that are most like the parent, grow them again. After 4, 5, 6 years of doing that, you have seedlings that have fruit that's so much like the original hybrid that you can't tell them apart. And they now have an open pollinated version. So Carmelo, which was a French hybrid, is now an open pollinated. I guess it's an heirloom because they did this in the 1990s and the hybrid was from the 1930s. I don't know what category to put it in, but you know what? Carmelo has got 50 fruit on it right now. They're about 8-ounce fruit. Some are bigger, 10 to 12 ounce. It's a beautiful red tomato. I'm not sure why I stopped growing it, except perhaps that there's so much competition in that medium-sized red fruit category that it just fell by the wayside. This year, it's going to be one of my top performers, obviously. It's got a lot of fruit on it, really good flavor. Good for slicing. When I say that, when we see that as a marketing term, good for slicing, great slicer. Lots of that connective tissue means you can slice it and the slice will hold together. So it's good for your sandwiches and things like that. Great flavor and looks like one of my top performers this year. So, well, again, cooler weather. So I'm not, going to say everybody jump in and grow Carmelo next year, but I will grow it next year. And I'll give you a full report after 2 years of production, see how it does. It gets a lot of comments and compliments from folks in the Pacific Northwest. So that tells me that it's actually good for those kind of climates. But I had grown it in the past with good results, very, very good results this year. Carmelo, one to look for. We don't know for sure when you buy it at a garden center, whether you're getting the old French hybrid or the more recent open pollinated dehybridized version of it. In either case, I suspect you'll have good results. Carmelo.
I went down this Italian tomato rabbit hole today. And it's all because of Google AI. When you go to Google and you put in a search term, and the first thing that pops up is an AI overview, and it was giving me some crap about Saucy Lady. But down there it says people also ask, what is the best tasting tomato of all time? And I go, well, okay, I'll click on this just to see what this is, and it was Pantano of Rome, Lazio. Lazio, I think, is like a precinct or a district in Italy near Rome, and Pantano of Rome. And it took me to this website called Learning with Experts. I'm very suspect at this point. And it was an article called 6 of the World's Best Tomatoes. It's a sponsored post by Franchi Seeds.
Oh, sure. I know Franchi Seeds. Yeah, they are the main company selling tomato seeds from Italy to American consumers.
Yeah, and there are American outlets where you can buy most of these seeds, which just so happen to have Franchi seed packets. But the names included one of your favorites, Croix de Boeuf Liguria.
Good job.
Thank you. And your other big favorite, Principe Borghese, is on the list.
Principe Borghese, which is actually a great little sun-drying tomato. It's a determinate one. It's got wonderful flavor. It's actually one of my standard tomatoes for growing for processing. And whether those are the best flavored, how would you even determine that? The flavor profiles of tomatoes range from somewhat acidic with high, rich tart flavor to very sweet tomatoes, low acid. They sometimes use that term, and people do have strong preferences in that regard. I do remember that the winner of a taste trial in California many years ago, Sunset Magazine did a taste trial. The winner of their taste trial was Early Girl that was grown without irrigation, or what they call dry farmed. From Napa Valley, and also the very famous chef in California, Alice Waters, who had essentially started what is known as California cuisine, was asked, what's the best flavored tomato? And her comment was a dry farmed Early Girl tomato from her friend's farm in Napa Valley. Now, bear in mind, Napa Valley gets more rain than we do, so they have a better start in terms of growing things without irrigation.
They get morning fog, too.
Yeah, they get cooler and they get just as hot during the day, but they have a little more coastal influence, a little more like where we are over on our side of the valley than perhaps other parts of Sacramento Valley. But her comment sparked a renewed interest. This is 30 plus years ago, a renewed interest in the old Early Girl variety, which had become very popular in the 1970s. And people jumped into this dry farming idea. You're not going to get great yields if you do that. You've got to understand what we're doing here when you do dry farming. You're essentially growing a determinate crop regardless of the nature of that particular variety. But the Early Girl, the well-known variety hybrid from the 1970s, was considered the best flavored tomato when grown with reduced irrigation on 2 separate trials. I would agree. Early Girl has wonderful flavor, and I think in general, tomatoes that are grown drier will probably have more concentrated flavor. But there's different styles to tomato flavor. I've had customers who find that they prefer yellow tomatoes because they think they're sweeter and less acidic, and they find they can digest them better. I don't know if that's actually true in terms of the digestion part, but they like the lower acid nature of certain of the yellow fruited tomatoes. Or they'll ask for Ace because it's often described as being a low acid tomato. It's a very good tomato for this area. It does extremely well. Compact plant, good sized fruit, sweeter, milder flavor. So it's hard to say what's the best flavor of all, but I think that any tomato you grow to full ripeness in your own garden will be the best flavored tomato.
Well, if people are interested in this Franchi tomato, the Pantano of Rome Lazio, that this guy calls the best tomato ever, I'll read you his description of it. He says, simply the best tomato I have ever tasted. On the larger side, fruits can reach 250 grams. It may keep its green shoulders, but they're ripe and not green tasty and crunchy. This tomato is sweet to the taste, pulpy, and has a rare character and quality seldom found these days. It's a cordon variety, C-O-R-D-O-N, a cordon variety, and would do best under cover in cooler areas to extend their season because they are larger tomatoes. They are very meaty, heavy, fleshy, with a thick skin, but still not a tomato full of pockets of seed and of low acidity. I cannot recommend these enough. A real cracker, he calls the Pantana of Rome Lazio.
Okay, I'll have to get some seed and try that next year and subject it to our rigorous taste trials, which means I take them in and see what the staff thinks.
Well, looking at the tomato, it's got green shoulders, and that right away makes me think of, well, that's a summertime problem in our area, except the shoulders are yellow.
Yeah, some green shoulders is actually a comment I saw about the Carmelo that we were talking about earlier. I haven't personally had that experience. It just means that they don't ripen evenly and uniformly, so it's not ever going to be a commercial variety. It should be fine for home gardeners. And this is, tomatoes that don't have perfect even ripening would generally not make it in breeding programs for that reason. They don't look right, but they may have the flavor that we're after. This was a big part of the appeal of heirloom varieties for years. Well, now some of the companies have been hybridizing heirlooms. We want to confuse the public. Hybridize heirlooms. Now, what do we call them? But there are some that I tried this year, these heirloom marriage varieties. And a good example is one called Genuwine. Well, it's producing a lot of fruit for me. It's got 30 or 40 on it right now. It was one of the later ones I planted end of March. And they're good size. They're beautiful fruit. And it's a cross between Costaluto Genovese and Brandywine.
Oh, okay.
So the Costaluto Genovese part is fine. That's always done very well for me. It's an Italian heirloom and loves the heat. But Brandywine, no, that's one that I don't recommend at all because they generally, let's say, I've been skunked by tomato varieties occasionally where I planted a plant and gotten 0 or 1 or 2 fruit on a vigorous plant. Brandywine's done that to me every time I plant it. It just does not take the heat. So I was a little skeptical, but I figured I'll give this one a try. It has done very well, and it looks like it's going to be a very good producer this year, 2025, with a relatively mild summer. It's looking like a very good possibility, and it looks like a good slicer. It's got great flavor, and so I have good hopes for Genuwine, one of the heirloom marriage types. Ball Seed Company seems to be the introducer on these, although I don't know if it's their product line. They're the ones that I got the information from. So that looks like a good one. And then there's another one called Marzanera. Well, what is Marzanera? Marzanera is a cross between San Marzano, which is one of the best known sauce tomatoes in the world, and another variety that I've never heard of. Okay. So cream sausage is the other one.
Oh yeah, I've had that. I've actually planted that. Yeah.
Okay, and it's a firm, meaty sauce type tomato. So far, Marzanera is one of my top producers this season. Smaller fruit, Roma style, San Marzano style. The thing about San Marzano is that it's a skinny fruit. It's kind of hollow. It's got a lot of meat, but not a lot of juice. And so it takes a lot of it to make a sauce, but it's got a legendary reputation. I mean, it's been around forever. It's actually a special variety. You can only label your cans of San Marzano if you're from a particular part of Italy, that kind of thing. This is a more useful fruit to me. It's got more meat to the fruit, and it's got really good flavor. So Marzanera looks very promising in this heirloom marriage product line.
Going back to the Genuwine tomato, since one of its parents is a Costaluto Genovese, one of the problems I've always had with the Costaluto Genovese is it gets soft on the vine very quickly. You have to go out there and squeeze it every day to figure out if it's ripe or not, and then don't leave it out there, but bring it in.
And use it right away. It has to go right in the pot. Yeah. So this one looks firmer than that. It looks like it's got more of that Brandywine parentage in that regard. So I'll definitely give you, in a wrap-up program in the end of the fall or in the beginning of next spring, we'll talk about this one. But it looks real promising. It does not seem to have that quick softening characteristic of Costaluto Genovese, but it has the flavor and it has the rich appearance.
Well, let's talk about the purple elephant in the room. The Norfolk purple tomato, number 2. So your friends over there in Davis that developed this tomato, it's a through and through purple tomato. It looks pretty. It's purple all the way through. It looks great in a salad. Last year, you couldn't find very many happy people with purple tomatoes that one because they were kind of bland and the plant.
The production was great. Yeah, the flavor was mild.
Yeah.
I've talked to the guy at the company. Yeah, they're here in Davis and they're down at the farmers market. This is genetically engineered, genetically modified. They've inserted a gene from a snapdragon that makes the flesh purple all the way through, whereas all other blue and purple tomatoes, basically the blue-purple part is the skin. This one, the difference is that it doesn't have the astringency that a lot of the other purple and blue tomatoes have. I'm not a big fan of them in general. I don't like the flavor profile of most of the blue and purple tomatoes that come on the market from conventional breeding. And they're just normal looking tomatoes on the inside. This one is beautiful. And the first year, he acknowledges they were, let's say, mild flavored. I joked with him. Their company is originally from England, so maybe these are an English style tomato where they are accustomed to milder flavored fruit. But each year, he knows that. They're working on higher sugar content. I said, you also need to bump up the acidity so that you get that balance of flavor and tartness that people actually expect in a tomato. This year's fruit are better, and they're getting up there. And I think they're on their way to having, in 2 or 3 years, perhaps one of the best flavored blue or purple tomatoes on the market because it won't have the astringency and they're working for more sweetness. So each year is better, and I think they've got something very promising. Also, it makes a great sun-dried tomato. One of my staff, when we had tons of them last year, I brought in a whole bowl of them. So she took them home, cut them in half, and dried them, and said they were great flavor and beautiful when you do the sun drying on them. So you can also do it in a regular dehydrator. You don't actually have to use the sun for this purpose. You can use electric power if you wish, and they actually are great for that as well. So the company knows that they've got some work to do on flavor profile, but they do have a beautiful fruit, and they're on their way.
Have they solved the cracking problem?
No.
Okay.
We'll have to discuss that in the next go around.
All right.
Now, I got to mention one heirloom that has just each year now, again, Cherokee purple. Speaking of purple tomatoes, I've got about 40 fruit on my plant. 2 years ago, it was one of my top producers. I never promise that with an heirloom tomato. I never say to you, this is going to be the best producer in your garden this year. But it was 2 years ago. And last year it was fine. And this year it's on its way to being another high producer. So of the heirlooms, which I'm always a little leery of, the two that have done well for me in general, Mortgage Lifter and Cherokee Purple. I didn't happen to plant Mortgage Lifter this year. But once again, Cherokee Purple is going to be a high producer. People really like it. It does soften pretty quickly. You've got to take it and use it fast. But it's an interesting sort of a brown-purple color. Looks like another good year for Cherokee Purple.
It's a pretty good size tomato too, isn't it?
Yeah, 8 to 10 ounce, and some of them bigger. And the only problem I'm having with it is that the turkeys seem to like it.
Oh, yeah.
So if you've got an answer to that problem, it doesn't involve lethal measures, we're fine.
Before we run out of energy or time, whichever comes first, what are the hot vegetables that were sold this spring and summer at your nursery that weren't tomatoes?
Well, peppers, there's an interesting trend towards mildly hot peppers. People seem to be really enjoying that. And also the fast yielding ones like shishito, which 10 years ago, I probably sold one flat of shishito all season. Now I sell flats and flats of it. People just love shishito peppers. They like them green. They like them ripe. They like the fun fact that 1 out of 10 is extremely hot and the rest of them are sweet. I have 1 out of 10 plants. So you never know. It's a little bit of Russian roulette there when you plant shishito. They're like pimento de padrone. It's that characteristic that some of the seeds grow to plants that have high capsaicin content and the others are just a sweet pepper. So that's been something I've enjoyed watching more and more novice gardeners planting shishito. And I'm glad because it's a reliable, high-yielding pepper for this area. And peppers in general are selling better and better, and more people are buying them right on through the summer. If you come into my nursery right now, you'll find 1 gallon peppers with fruit on them, and they're flying out. People are buying them all summer long. And we talk about this. We want you to understand this is a subtropical plant. I'm not promising it will get through the winter, but they frequently do. More and more as the years are going by, for reasons that I think scientists could possibly explain, more peppers are making it through the winter, and people are growing them more or less as perennials. And you can do this. You can take the plant, move it up to a big container, pull it up closer to the house, and you can at least harvest all the way in through December and into January in a normal winter here. And very commonly, you can get them right on through. So peppers are smaller fruited types are probably your best bet. You know the kind of peppers I'm selling fewer and fewer of? Bell peppers, because they're just a hassle. They burn, they sun scald. But, gypsy, the Marconis, The shishitos I've mentioned, the Anaheims for a slightly hot pepper. I've got one Anaheim right now that I'm looking at out my window that's got 12 fruit on it, one single plant. And they also take very well to container culture, which is much more of a problem with tomatoes. They're just too big for containers in general, but peppers are great. You can give them plenty of water. They do like to be fertilized, or you go into a very enriched potting soil, but they do very well for me. So I would say the trend towards peppers is one I'm happy to see, because they're just likely to give people good results, especially now that they've gotten away from having to have a bell pepper. Going to pepper.
If one wanted to grow a pepper over the winter and maybe grow it in a container and move it closer to the house or even inside on a really cold day, what size container should it be in?
5 gallon is going to be the minimum for most of them. Something a little bigger than that might be even better, but 7 gallon or 10 gallon. And get that, spend your money on good potting soil in this case, because they love an enriched soil. And then you can just pull it up close to the house and have it under an overhang until we get into the really cold weather in late December into January. You might need to bring it in, but the main thing is that you can get fruit ripening on them all the way into at least early winter. And in many cases, you can get it through. The other area where I'm seeing a lot of interest is the new basil varieties that have come on the market. The tower basils, which are great. The Emerald Towers is a Genovese style basil. They've crossed Ocimum basilicum, the regular basil, with another species of Ocimum, which is the genus of basils. These interspecific hybrids don't flower. They grow and grow.
They're plants. They got to flower.
Well, they haven't for me. So far, they've been on the market 4 or 5 years now. And every year I plant them, and I plant regular sweet basil, and I plant Genovese basil and all kinds of others. I like to grow them all. And this one, they just plug along. And last year we got into December and freezing weather, and the plants finally died. They had never flowered all season. They just got taller and taller. The name tower refers to the fact they have this very columnar habit. They look like a little boxwood plant as the season goes along. Slower growing than conventional sweet basil, but much longer production. You don't have to pinch them. You don't have plants that are just kind of fizzling out as the season goes along. So they're great. And I really recommend that people plant both. Plant the regular sweet basil for your early crop, and then let these slower growing, steady pace of production grow right on into the fall and winter. So the Tower series, and there's now a Tower version of the Thai basil as well. So these are great for people who want a steady supply all season long and don't want to have to worry about basil plants flowering and having to pinch them and snip them all the time. The other end of the spectrum is the Magic Mountain, which is grown just for the flowers. Basically, it's a Thai basil that has got very showy blooms, purplish foliage. I'm looking at one out the window right now, and I can see bees all over this thing. I see a swallowtail coming to it right as we speak, and it just blooms like crazy. Yeah, you can use it if you happen to like Thai basil. It's in that kind of more astringent flavor range that people who use Thai basil prefer. But it's really a great garden plant. And this is one that continues to, it flowers quickly and flowers all season and goes right on into freezing weather as well. So the Magic Mountain basil, the Tower basil for production, the Magic Mountain basil to draw pollinators and beneficials into the garden.
Well, hold on a second here, P.T. Barnum. According to one of the seed distributors of the Tower basil, all they say is this cultivar holds off flower production up to 12 weeks longer than other types of basil. So eventually, it will flower.
So they say. Hasn't happened to me.
Well, it's only August.
So it goes a long time. How's that?
Yes.
Maybe you wanted to go through the winter and flower the next spring.
Yes.
And by the way, the flavor is the same. There's the Tower basil that we're all selling, Emerald Towers, the Genovese basil type. And Genovese, to me, there's a lot of basils out there, just for the record. It gets a little confusing to people. There's lemon basil and cinnamon basil. I have no use for those. But the Genovese is the one that people really want. That's the flavor that makes classic pesto, and that's the flavor of the Emerald Towers basil.
One vegetable that did great this year, and I'll be planting more very soon, is the bodega red potato.
Yeah, this is an heirloom.
Yeah, from the north coast of California. It was the official tomato or potato of California. at
Yes,
one
it's part
point.
of part of the slow food movement where they're
Mm-hmm.
reintroducing old heirloom varieties. And one of the master gardeners out of Sacramento contacted us and asked us if we wanted to be like one of the first in the valley actually selling this. Yeah, we grabbed a bag of them, and we've already signed up to have a bag next year. Great feedback on that one. It's been in California, 100 years, something like that.
Oh, it goes back further than that. I think some guys on a Russian trawler jumped ship at Sebastopol and had the potatoes in his pocket.
Well, that's important. If you're going to land, you better bring your food crops with you, and
Yes.
you got to have your source for vodka. So
That was probably it. Yeah.
yeah, that's been very good. And the other whole category that I've just been really impressed with this year is cucumbers. They took off. They've loved this mild weather. I've gone entirely to burpless types, burpless and Persian types, because they never get bitter. The one exception to that category is that I always grow a lemon cucumber because it's just a personal favorite. But those people who grow regular green cucumbers are always complaining that they get bitterness on them. And if you go into the average nursery, they'll say, "Oh, that's the way you're watering. It's uneven watering." No, no. Regular cucumbers get bitter here when it's hot. When they're stressed, they get bitter. And it has nothing to do with your watering. Well, if you're watering wrong, they'll be even worse. But even when you water correctly, we have a heat wave, you get bitterness on them. It's not a problem with the burpless types. And this is a term we use for the ones that have very small seed cavities, reduced seeds. In many cases, people burp because of the seeds in cucumbers. Burpless types don't have that. They're sweeter. You theoretically can eat the peel. I don't, but you can. And they've been phenomenal for me. So I've gotten completely away from regular green cucumbers and just entirely doing either burpless types or the Persian ones, but you got to move fast on those. You see them 5 or 6 inches long in the morning. By the end of the day, they're too big. So you got to harvest them more consistently. But in general, burpless cucumbers, and my old favorite, the lemon cucumber, just for the flavor. But a great year for cucumbers in general because of the milder weather is my assumption.
And the milder weather has produced a plant in my yard I've never grown before, rhubarb. It's coming up. It's growing.
Rhubarb.
Yeah.
Rhubarb is one of those plants where people from the Midwest will walk into my nursery and say, "Why are you selling that? It's a weed." I'll say, people here really fuss at it. If it goes more than 3 years, you've done well. So it's a plant that apparently prefers Midwestern, I don't know, humidity, cold winters, some combination
both.
of those
Yeah.
things.
It's a crimson red variety. I planted it on January 17th, and it just sat there and did nothing. And then finally it sprouted. I think it was in April or May, and now it's growing.
So you'll have rhubarb. Have you got your strawberries planted so you can have strawberry rhubarb pie next year?
I have no idea what I'm going to do with this.
Rhubarb is something that's a little tricky to grow here. My best results with it have generally been when I had it on the edge of my orchard and it was getting watered deeply and fairly infrequently because it seems to be pretty easy to rot rhubarb, especially going to about the 3rd and 4th year. A raised bed would probably make a big difference for that because you get the drainage away from the crown. So congratulations on growing rhubarb successfully after 57 years of being a gardener.
Yeah, and now all I have to do is make a rhubarb pie, I guess.
Yeah, there you go.
I think we have planted and harvested the garden so far in 2025 and here in mid-August. Now we could get another hot spell, and
yes,
we could be singing the blues, in 4 weeks. You never know.
The hottest temperatures that we experienced in the last few years were in September 2022 when it got to 116 degrees for 2 days,
Yes.
then 110 for 2 days, then 106 for 3 days. We still see effects on trees and shrubs from that extreme heat event. So September can be very hot, but you can get really good yields here from your vegetable garden if you deep water in August and early September. One thing I would add is a little bit of fertilizer, especially on the peppers, eggplant, cucumbers maybe, but especially peppers and eggplant to keep them going can make a big difference. Whatever you prefer to use, liquid fertilizer, fish emulsion, your favorite granular fertilizer that they sell at the local garden center, those are all fine. You don't generally need to feed your tomatoes to keep them going. I don't really push nitrogen for tomatoes, but for the peppers and eggplant, and I would say the cucumbers, light feeding mid-August is actually very beneficial to get that late season crop that we've been talking about.
A very good tip to end on here in midsummer. Don Shor is with Redwood Barn Nursery in Davis. By the way, he has a podcast.
That's true. Davis Garden Show. And it's got its own homepage and everything.
Give it a listen.
There you go. We'll talk in October about which tomatoes you're still harvesting.
We'll be talking about canning and freezing and dehydrating and all that stuff too. Don, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Great to be here.
While editing today's Garden Basics podcast, I was taking copious notes all about the great garden tips Don Shor and I were discussing. In fact, it was the most notes I have ever taken for any episode. So maybe you were taking notes too while listening? Well, if so, I just hope you weren't driving. But I'll make it a lot easier for you. Check out the transcript of today's episode, especially the more accurate transcripts that you can find at our website, gardenbasics.net, or at our podcast uploader, Buzzsprout. Or you can just refer to the Friday, August 22nd edition of the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter, where I will be expanding on those garden tips mentioned today, those tips that really hit home for me. Find a link to more information about the Garden Basics newsletter in today's show notes or at our homepage, gardenbasics.net, or you can just do an internet search for the Beyond the Garden Basics newsletter. And thank you for your paid support and encouragement to keep the good gardening conversation going. Coming up on Saturday, October 4th, I'm going to be riding my bike. Well, what's so unusual about that, you might be asking yourself? Well, October 4th is the date of the Sacramento Century Challenge. That's a 100-mile bicycling event that goes along the Sacramento River. It starts in downtown Sacramento and heads south through the Delta farmland region and loops back. And yes, 100 miles is part of the challenge. Also part of the challenge is myself. I'm 74 years old, for heaven's sakes. And no, I will not be riding an electric bike. I have plenty of acoustic bikes to choose from. Adding to the challenge will be the route itself. It's infamous for pothole-filled river levee roads, as well as ferocious northerly headwinds that are usually in your face while you're pedaling on the way back. Now, I'm doing this for a very good cause. I'm helping out the Sacramento Rotary Club raise money for the Sacramento Children's Home Crisis Nursery. The Sacramento Children's Home Crisis Nursery is the only program of its kind here in Sacramento County. It directly prevents child abuse and neglect by supporting families with small children at times of crisis. The nursery allows parents to bring their children, ages newborn to 5, for emergency hourly or overnight care and protection during difficult times at home. Their goal is to keep families together and reduce the number of children entering foster care. We're calling this Farmer Fred's Ride for the Kids, and we'll have a link in today's show notes with more information on how you can donate to help out the Sacramento Children's Home Crisis Nursery and urge me onward. So how about it? Maybe you could pledge 10 cents a mile. That would be $10, along with a hearty, "You go, Fred," or maybe a more generous $1 a mile. That's $100 to help give me the mental endurance for this all-day ride. And at my age, I'll have you know, I will take my time, thank you, and enjoy the farmland scenery, and of course try to stay upright on the bike. Again, please support Farmer Fred's Ride for the Kids. Look for the link in today's show notes or at gardenbasics.net. Your support will help provide a safe place for local small children in need. Thank you for your support. Garden Basics with Farmer Fred comes out every Friday. Garden Basics is available wherever podcasts are handed out. For more information about the podcast, as well as an accurate transcript of the podcast, visit our website, gardenbasics.net. And thank you so much for listening and your support.